excuse. I've been definitely using the I'm not fully vaccinated to not do shit. I've been rather proud of the excuse.
Get my Coors Light.
Yeah, I'm still on the Estrella kick. I'm still into it.
Won't slow me down. All right, you ready?
I am ready.
Good evening. Welcome to Sick and Wrong, the world source for antisocial commentary. I'm one of your hosts, Steve Simon.
And if in doubt, whip it out. I'm Kate Rambo.
What's cracking there, Kate Rambo?
Not much, mate. What's been going on with you? You're the one with the stories. You tell us.
Proud are you to host a podcast with someone who is called a twisted soul by Ted Cruz? Ted the Zodiac Killer Cruz. Senator Ted Cruz. Lion Ted. Who I think Trump once called a pussy.
He did call him
called
a pussy.
Me a twisted soul. If you look at the screen right now here on the live stream, you can see he not only called me a twisted soul, he also called me a lefty troll. But he said, fair, you twisted soul.
Yeah.
How amazing is that?
He called you out. I mean, name a Jew that isn't a twisted soul.
I don't know. It's such a badge of honor. It blew me away. You know, so obviously he didn't fall for my little gambit, you know, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The fact that he responded, was triggered, and then called me a twisted soul and retweeted to his 4 million followers is a win in my book. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted.
For you.
I mean, it was amazing. It was a bit of a viral moment. You know, it happened last week as I was doing research for the 800th episode, and I'm still getting messages and notifications. Like, it's still going. I mean, the guy's got 4 million followers and he retweeted this picture. But basically what happened, and this happens, this is actually something I've done many times. Never, ever have I got an asshole Republican to retweet me, though. That's never happened. No one ever responds. But usually what happens is I'm hungover and I'm sitting at my computer and I'm looking for the news, and I read the news. Just try to find articles for the show and whatnot. And I came across an article about Governor Abbott in Texas and Ted Cruz, and they're passing legislation to basically pass a bounty of $10,000. Like, if you turn someone in who got an abortion after 6 weeks, you get $10,000 from the state of Texas. Like, they're passing this law. Not only that, they're trying, shutting down Planned Parenthoods. And I was just like, fuck these assholes. And it gets me enraged, and it could be anything, it could be them restricting voting rights, whatever shitty thing that they're trying to do, these hypocritical piece of shit asshole Republicans. Then I start tweeting to them, and I've done this for years. Never have I gotten a response up until last Saturday. So I tweeted to Senator Cruz a picture of serial killer Dean Corll, the Candyman of Houston, Texas, a notorious pedophile, pederast serial killer who murdered like 28 boys. I found a picture
probably
of him. Yeah, probably more. I found a picture of him in a military uniform. He actually did serve in the military. Not surprising. 1964
he also
to
got a veteran's funeral.
Oh, wow. Really? They give that guy a veteran's funeral?
He certainly did have a veteran's funeral.
You think you'd be dishonorably discharged from a veteran's funeral after like murdering and torturing 28 boys? Anyway, or torturing and murdering. But so I tweeted to him saying, hey, Senator Cruz, thanks for putting America first. You always got to come in with a flattering line first. Can I get a happy birthday retweet from my granddad who served in the U.S. Army? Hashtag America first, hashtag veteran support. And I included a picture of Dean Corll in his military uniform. And I didn't just tweet Ted Cruz. I tweeted Abbott. I tweeted Marjorie Taylor Greene. I tweeted Matt Gaetz. I'm in this mindset. I'm hungover, and this is what I do, okay? To alleviate the pain of being hungover.
You're to alleviate the pain of being a twisted soul.
Never in my wildest imagination did I think he'd actually respond. And sure enough, like maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes after, Ted Cruz responds, hey, lefty troll, I'm sorry your grandfather was Dean Arnold Corll, an American serial killer who abducted, raped, tortured, and murdered at least 28 teenage boys and young men between 1970 and 1973 in Houston, Texas. God bless our troops anyway. you twisted soul. And
Twisted
and
soul.
made my day. I responded to him, thanks, Ted. You made my day. And then from there, it just erupted. I mean, because he retweeted it, and then I mean, he's got like 4 million followers. And then other liberal people like Ken Klippenstein, he retweeted it. That went out to like, you know, I don't know, like 22,000 likes like from when I checked immediately. I mean, it was crazy. It just kind of blew up. And so all these people started like responding to me on my Twitter and tagging me in tweets. And I got to say, they range from positive to very negative. All very, very amusing. But the one, here's a couple of highlights here. One guy wrote, "This is the funniest I've seen today. Laughing my fucking ass off. Cruz is so sour. I love it." Another guy said he tweeted an obvious joke, and Ted Cruz reverse image searched, found the Wikipedia article, copy and pasted it in his quote tweet. Getting a sitting U.S. senator to do that is hilarious and a win, which I completely agree with that. I like that one.
Well, I don't think he will have reversed image searched it. I certainly think
maybe his assistant did.
Yeah,
but what's weird is I tweeted to Senator Ted Cruz's Twitter. He responded, I think, with just the Ted Cruz Twitter. So maybe, I don't know, but I'd like to imagine he's so triggered, like, oh, you lefty troll, I'm going to show you. I'm going to embarrass you.
Takes a killer to know a killer, doesn't it? I bet he was like, oh, that bloody Dean, I'm better than him, mate. I created, you know, some scripts that they're still trying to decipher.
I'm going to have to go more obscure to outsmart the Zodiac.
Yeah, you will.
Another guy goes, "Thanks, Ted. I didn't know who D was until this. Next thing you know, I'm listening to his podcast talking about CIA Project Stargate. Pretty dope."
Nice.
Another person goes, "You got to go more obscure next time. The Cruz is, quote, very knowledgeable about serial killers," which he is, because it takes one to know one. Another person, right? This is the funniest thing I've seen on Twitter in a minute. The fact that Cruz reverse image search this, the fact that Cruz clearly copied an excerpt from Wikipedia, and the vast amount of boomers in the replies who don't get it. That was the best part, is just hundreds of boomers being like, "You got owned. You got owned by Ted Cruz." And I was like, I remember I responded to a few like, "Own?" ? He called me a twisted soul. I think that's a win. But here's some of the negative ones. Here's some of the negative ones.
Hear them.
Seems like another example of the new left-wing pedo troll. All right, I'll take that. This was common amongst the boomers. The boomers love this one. "Swing and a miss. Probably not used to seeing others fight back." Okay.
What? Fight back how? You just wanted to wish the troops, like, you know, good on the troops. He was a troop.
I like this guy. He's claiming a win because Cruz called him a twisted soul. What would the lose look like? I don't think there is a lose in this situation, if you ask me, but
it's a win for you, baby.
This one was very common amongst the boomers. Senator Cruz, mic drop, boom, you've been owned. And then this guy, "It's you who doesn't understand. D. Simon was hoping Cruz would blindly retweet a serial killer. Not only did Cruz not fall into the trap, he called out D. Simon. D. Simon failed, plain and simple." This guy, "Twisted soul," translated means douchebag.
That's also true.
If Ted Cruz would have called me a douchebag, I would have thought that was equally amazing.
I like twisted soul more.
Yeah. And it's still going on. Like they're still responding. I've kind of stopped replying to people. I don't really
the
care
last time I looked at it, it was like 6,000 likes. And I was just like, Jesus, that's viral.
But what was great about it, though, is we got a lot of new listeners out of it, and I welcome everybody. I mean, it's cool that people are actually checking it out. But it also inspired us to let's cover Dean Corll this week for episode 801. I mean, he's probably one of the most notorious serial killers, definitely in Houston, but probably in serial killer history. I mean,
when I first joined the show, we were both like, he was both on our list of people to cover eventually. So now,
you know,
we're going to take him off the list.
Exactly. Like he's one that it's been on the bucket list of serial killers to cover on the show. And thank you, Ted Cruz, for inspiring us to finally cover him. I
to do something
appreciate
good
that.
for the world.
Dean
Yeah.
Corll, the
So this is
Candyman.
like the Candyman. I've pieced it together from like all the usual offenders on the internet, but I found the book Man with the Candy by Jack Olson to be a great source. So a lot of that is coming from that. I'm going to be getting into the rape and abuse and torture of teenage boys. This podcast is the equivalent of rotten.com. There will be no holes barred. So if you can't handle it, just skip ahead till the end when we play a nice little song.
Yeah, it's
Does that
kind
sound
of
good for
it's
you,
definitely
Dean?
kind of a gnarly one. I would probably put this up there
Super
with
gnarly.
yeah, with Bob Burdella and the Toy Box Killer.
Oh my, he's very comparable to
And
all of
Kate
them.
like spares no details, all right? When it comes to like
You
torture,
know me.
especially of children, Kate's like, "Oh, I got to write every single detail
Oh,
down so we can
you know
discuss
I
it
do
thoroughly."
for you people. So in just 3 years, Dean Corll, he managed to rape, torture, and murder at least, or the ones that we know about, 28 young boys and men from the Houston suburb that he lived in. We've got echoes of Gacy here, who was actually up to very similar types of shenanigans in Illinois. We'll get into that. But Dean, what separates him from the other type of killers is that he wouldn't have been able to get away with it if it wasn't for a little help from his friends and an absolutely beyond useless police force. But I am getting a bit ahead of myself, so let's go back to the beginning.
That is
So
an
Dean,
interesting thing about Dean Corll, though, is he did have accomplices. It was like a group. It was
oh
like
yeah,
a team effort. So it
an
definitely sets him
alliance of
apart.
evil. Dean Arnold Corll, he was born on Christmas Eve, 1939, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He was the first child of the quarrelsome couple, Mary Emma and Arnold Irwin Corll. Arnie, like most 50 dads, he was strict with his son. And, Mary, she took a more protective side, but they would divorce when Dean was 7 years old. They would have frequent moves. Then they had a reconciliation in Pasadena, Texas, which saw them marry again, but that didn't work out. And so the couple divorced again. Now, Mary, she likes to get married and divorced. Dean, in his childhood, when he wasn't busy making jewelry with the corpses of the various carrion that he found in the neighborhood, especially squirrels, he had a thing for squirrels, skeletons.
Everybody's got to have a hobby, though.
Oh, yeah, of course. He was described as a shy boy who had little interactions with the other neighborhood kids, probably because they didn't want to make jewelry out of dead animals, which is understandable. His mother had by now remarried for about the 20th time, and the family had settled in Vida, Texas, where his mother and his stepfather, they started a small family-run candy company from their garage called Pecan Prince. Now, D, is it pecan or pecan? How do you say it? Pecan? It's the same
Americans
thing.
say pecan.
Pecan.
Yeah,
I would say it pecan pie.
pecan.
So pecan pie. In the earliest days of this setup, Dean, he would come home from school and he would immediately just begin work making candy, and he would help box and process orders. And it didn't seem to bother him. He kept good grades, although he was noted for being a loner, and he actually couldn't participate in school teams because he had a heart murmur.
Yeah,
So
no
he was
PE for Dean Corll, which is
just
probably a
pecan
good thing.
pies.
Like if I could have got out of phys ed, I'd be happy about that.
Well, his heart murmur, it didn't stop him from casually dating girls, and it didn't stop him from being drafted into the US Army in
You know what
1964.
I read during that time? He actually did form a close relationship with a girl, and he rejected a marriage proposal she made to him in 1962.
Oh, how gutting for her.
Yeah, I wonder if it was at like a sporting event or something, like a baseball game, and he was just like, "Oh
Oh, it
no,
came on the
oh my god,
Kissatron.
yeah," like the
Yeah.
jumbotron, and he was just like, "No
Yeah.
way." And he
Yeah.
just like grabs his
Listen, lady.
purse and like,
Yeah.
I do
I'm
love
about
when
to
that
find out that
happens.
I'm really, really gay. Because when he was in the army, he was sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana, or we're going to call it Fort Polk, because it was here that Dean realized he was as gay as the days long. Finally lost his virginity. He was playing the hide the pork sword with a fellow army cadet. And he would only last 10 months at Fort Polk because he was honorably discharged, meaning he could receive his soldier's pension. And he returned back to his now divorced mother. Again, this is like her 20th divorce. And she was now running her own candy company called, with some imagination, the Corll Candy Company. Here he would become vice president and pederast of the local Houston Heights neighborhood, which luckily for him was located across the street from a grade school.
He
And it
really
was with this
does.
return home.
He
Yeah.
does really look like a pederast. Though. I mean, look at this picture. I'm posting. I mean, he's got that like face of a pedophile.
You can spot
The
them, can't
shifty
you?
eyes. Yeah, the shifty eyes, like always looking
I would
around, trying to
say
find a little kid.
he looks like a man with a twisted soul.
I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah.
But not all
So,
people with twisted souls are pedophiles.
no. It was this return home and the candy company that would actually provide the cover for Dean to turn from a kind of normal citizen into a phebophile and a hebophile, which are basically just, the fancy words for is attracted to teenage boys, serial killer. In
Wait, did
what
you
we
say
call in one
pedophile or hebophile?
hebophile.
I think they're two different things. I think
A
you're a
hebophile.
hebophile. Dean Corll's a pedophile.
Hey, he's both. He might have hated the Jews as well. Don't you be putting words in Dean
All
Corll's
right,
mouth,
maybe he's
D.
not a hebophile.
So in what we now call grooming, Dean would hang out at the school gates daily to the point where he actually got banned off the school property because he was doling out free candy to the school children. It's like in a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, he's the child catcher.
How creepy is that though? This grown man hangs out at like an elementary school just handing out candy.
And they were just like, please, sir, can you leave, sir? We're not banning you, but can you leave?
Well, they even gave him the nickname.
They did.
Two
So
nicknames.
he also took to hiring these kids for after school labor, helping make the candy. And it was noted that although like the parents weren't happy about him being on school property, they all thought he had a sweet smile and they dubbed him the Candy Man
But he
of the
also had
Heights.
another nickname that called the Pied Piper.
Yeah.
So he had like
Yeah.
two nicknames, two exceedingly creepy nicknames.
What a good guy.
Yeah.
So one teenage boy who actually worked at the company, he made complaints to Mama Corll that Dean had made sexual advances towards him, and her way to deal with this little problem was to simply fire the child. So maybe this situation had been addressed at that time. 27 young boys wouldn't have met their deaths at the hands of the Candyman. But hindsight, D, it's a terrible thing, isn't it? Why would she believe the boy?
Well, she trusted her son, the VP of Candy Company.
There was lots of young boys hanging out at the factory now. Dean had even installed a pool table in the rec area, and he encouraged them to bring their friends. It was a hangout spot for the bored 1970s kids in the neighborhood, and there was a lot of them. And it soon became a mecca for these runaways that came from troubled homes. And there was a lot in Houston at the time because in Texas in the early 1970s, it actually wasn't illegal for a child to run away from home and to stay away from home. So the chief of the Houston Police Department claimed that there was nothing that authorities could do to help them. And so all these kids kind of clung to the Candyman as like a father figure.
Do you think he made them wear like lederhosen and paint their skin orange and have green wigs and sing songs when to teach other kids a lesson about morality?
That's what you would do.
Well, no, I'm just wondering. It's like he had a candy company. You don't think he had any Oompa Loompas? These were little kids. They're about Oompa Loompa size.
Well, to be fair, I would go down the Oompa Loompa. If you can have an Oompa Loompa, why not have one? It's a bit like how I
No
always say,
girls are Oompa Loompas, all right? No girls
no,
allowed.
no girls are allowed to be on podcasts, and no girls are allowed to be Oompa Loompas.
Quit trying to ruin my candy factory. God.
One of these
You're
kids.
right about the runaways, though.
Oh yeah, we have a little clip, don't we?
Yeah, here's a clip from the police chief over here in Houston talking about some of the runaways who worked at pedophile Wonka's factory.
How would you classify this series of crimes?
Just like I said a while ago, a hell of a sadistic type of a clown that'd pull something like this.
And you think most of these victims are young boys?
I'm pretty reasonably sure they are. The reports that we have, missing persons, are all a bunch of kids, 13, 14, 15 years old.
The death side and the grave side itself appears tragic enough, but do you think many of them went under any torture?
Well, when you're fooling with a nut like this, that's a pervert, you can expect most of anything.
I love this guy's voice. Sounds like
It's like-
Foghorn Leghorn.
So it's like Boomhauer I was like, okay.
When you're pulling away the pervert, could do anything.
One of the boys actually, who hung out at the factory was a kid named David Brooks, who was 12 years old when he was first snuck a piece of candy from the candy man. So for 2 years, he'd regularly be given sweet treats and like tidbits from Dean. He was considered a favorite. And when he was 14 years old in 1969, pederast Dean raped him for the first time. So in 1969 as well, on Dean's 30th birthday, it was noted that he kind of took a shift in his personality. He didn't seem to be as nice or as sweet anymore. He was more sullen, more glum. It could be that his conscience was maybe catching up with him. He was now, by this point, regularly paying Brooks in cash or gifts so that the young boy would perform blowjobs on him. They would often go away for day trips together, appearing as father and son, a real twisted father and son. So much so that when Brooks dropped out of high school and he would stay at his real father's home in Houston, he'd actually hang out all weekend with Corll instead. And he regarded it as his second home, to the point where he did just end up living there. It was a second home that he was being raped in, but it was a second home nonetheless.
Here's a picture of young David Brooks and old David Brooks. So just little,
What prison life will do to you.
yeah, you age. But then again, he was in there for a long time.
So Dean, there was kind of like the air of suspicion about his relationship with David Brooks because he was now essentially alone in his Houston Heights neighborhood. Because his mother, after guess what, another divorce, along with his half sister. I know she freaking loves
How many
getting married.
times was she married? Yeah, why? Who's marrying her?
Desperate men.
Well, you know what though? She owns a candy company. I mean, she must have had some money.
Well, it was a candy company that she operated out of her garage. I wouldn't say she's got money. So,
how many Oompa Loompas?
Oh, at least by this point, 14.
Okay, that's all right.
So they upsticked. They moved to Colorado. She shut the candy company. So Dean now had to get a job, and he became an electrician for the Houston Light and Power Company. Mama Corll, she loved her son deeply. She begged him to move with them, but he didn't want to for reasons that will soon become apparent. And they spent the rest of his life talking often on the phone. She would never see him again, and now Dean was free from the prying eyes of his mother. So what do you think is going to happen?
I can imagine.
Yeah. To begin with, he moved frequently throughout the Pasadena area of Houston. He would never really stay in a place for more than a few months, and his apartments were always full of teen boys. And he was really good at entertaining these teen boys. He would ply them with beer, weed, paint and glue to huff. But he never... Pardon?
It's like a smorgasbord of drugs.
A smorgasbord. I forgot to
There's some paint. Here's some glue. Just go have at it, you guys.
And so in what reminded me of like Charles Manson, he would never get fucked up. Dean would maybe have one beer while all these kids would be getting absolutely annihilated, which is a very Charles Manson thing to do to keep control. And he would actually encourage all the teenage boys in the neighborhood to come and hang out. Teenage boys. Girls weren't allowed.
I'm amazed that there's like all these boys are like, oh yeah, let's go hang out at the creepy Candyman's house.
The Candyman's house.
I mean, maybe it's different in, what is this, the 60s?
Yeah.
But, you know, when I was in high school, like in the 90s, if someone was like, oh yeah, you know that like fully grown man who has a house and he'll give you beer and paint thinner, but we call him the Candyman because he used to hang out at the elementary school passing out candy to kids. You want to go over there? I'd be like, I think that's a hard pass for me.
Until he's starting offering you money.
All right. Well, it depends on how much.
Yeah. So his buddy, David Brooks, had actually only months before these types of parties started happening, walked in on Dean as he had two naked teenage boys tied to his bed on his first prototype torchboard, which was a 7-foot long slab of 3-inch thick plywood, which he had made holes in to secure ropes in so that he could restrain wrists and ankles, which is very Gacy. And Brooks had walked in and found Dean sexually assaulting the boys. Dean got around it because he promised David that it was all a joke, ha ha ha, albeit a cruel one. And so he untied the boys and he freed them. These boys honestly don't know how lucky they were. And at this point, David could have maybe turned in, Dean could have said he's been raping me and I've caught him doing this to some kids my age. But by now, his roommate slash boyfriend, he kind of chose to believe Dean. And because Dean had said that he just intended to take Polaroids of the boys and he was going to sell them to fellow pedophiles that he knew in pedophile rings. And besides, Dean bought David a nice little new Corvette. And so David was just like, I'll keep silent. And his silence undoubtedly cost lives and had him caught in this web of lives with Dean.
Well, they were definitely in collusion at this point. I mean, he was, getting gifts. And I think I would like to say like David Brooks lacked, a keen sense of judgment. Because I mean, if it was me and I saw, two naked teenage boys tied to a torture board, I'd be like, I don't even care about the free weed. I'm done. I'm out. I'm over this.
Corvette.
But I think there was definitely collusion here because he's like, well, sure, he rapes a bunch of boys. He's in a gay porn ring, pedophiles. And, it's like, I'm getting a Corvette. It's like, I think this kid at this point kind of shows greed over compassion here.
So we're going to start kind of getting into like the first known of Dean's murders because
let me just point out real quick though, look at the face of the one cop here standing in front of the torture board.
Him.
He's just like, he's got this like grimace on his face of just
he looks like Billy Bob Thornton in Sling Blade.
He is just not happy to be there. The other guys, the other good old boy is just like, all right, look at this torture board. But this guy's just like, I can't
My mama had one of these on the farm. So the first known victim slash believed victim of Corll is Jeffrey Conan, and he disappeared while he was hitchhiking from Austin to Houston to be with his girlfriend on September the 25th, 1970. So he had accepted a ride from the Candyman, and he was never seen again until his decomposing body was dug up from its shallow grave. So, like I said, they say that Jeffrey was his first real victim, although judging by Dean's years of grooming and sexual abuse, this is kind of hard to know for sure and probably will never actually be known. Dean had now managed to convince David that if he brought him boys, he would pay him a finder's fee up to $200 a head. And so he began to procure boys that he felt would make Daddy Dean happy. And on December the 13th, which is only a couple of months later of the same year, David would first bring the boys to die at the hands of Dean Corll, now the devil of Houston Heights. James Glass and David Yates, both 14 years old. David hadn't known James, but he'd actually been a lifelong friends with David Yates. And he had no qualms watching Dean rape, torture, and murder the boys on his torture board. And in fact, David joined in too.
That's the thing. He is definitely receiving some kind of sexual gratification from this as well. Quick fact here: Brooks lured the two boys. I mean, he knew David Yates really well, but he lured these boys from a religious rally held in Houston Heights. Yeah, and he's just like, "You guys want to come over to my friend's apartment?" And they're just like, "Yeah, screw Jesus. Let's go and snort some glue." Yeah, huff some paint. Next thing you know, torture board. That's what happens when you turn your back on Jesus.
Praise the Lord. So he took Brooks with him to bury the boys in his rented boat shed, which was big enough for a yacht, but it was now become his graveyard. So the landlady of the boat shed, she said it was strange how in all the years that he rented this off her, she never saw him own a boat. And he would come to the shed several times a week. And when it rained, the smell was appalling. But she was actually considering renting him a second boat shed as, hey, like money talks. And who actually has less scruples than a serial killer other than a landlord or other than Ted Cruz?
Yeah, I think they all have the same level of scruples at that point.
So only 6 weeks after his double murder, he would rape and strangle 15-year-old brothers, Donald and Jerry Waldrop, who would join the ever-increasing missing kids list of Houston. Brooks next handed Corll his friend, because these kids were all his friend. He knew all these people. 15-year-old Randall Harvey. Yeah, and he knew them from just around town. Randall Harvey was actually only wanted a ride to work, and instead he got a ride to death.
Just no conscience. I mean, he knew what was going to happen. He knew the fate
and he
that was going to befall these kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
exactly.
participated in the murders. Gregory Winkle, 15, was next, and David Hillgeist, 15. They were next door neighbors, and they would actually become next door neighbors in the graveyard boat shed because Dean strangled them one by one after he has raped them as Brooks looked on. Both these boys had also worked formally at the factory, with Gregory only working there for a short spell. So unlike a lot of these other kids who some of them were runaways, Gregory's family, they had been aware of like the rising number of teenage boys going missing. So they launched their own investigation because they knew the Houston cops were fucking shit. They weren't going to do anything. They started handing out flyers, they performed search parties. And one of the boys who helped look for any evidence that Gregory was still alive was Gregory's lifelong friend, a teen by the name of Elmer Wayne Henley. Elmer Wayne Henley, he was also an acquaintance of David Brooks. And within just 6 months, Elmer would have forgotten all about his lifelong friend Gregory and instead be invested in his new relationship with Dean Corll.
That's the thing I don't get though is all these parents now. These parents are like, oh, these teenage boys are missing. The police are like, these teenage boys are missing. How did no one suspect the guy who was having parties with all these teenage boys? The guy who lived on his own. He was single, an adult
A
who was
bachelor.
furnishing these teens with alcohol and drugs. And I'm sure they could have asked anybody, like, hey, where'd you get that weed? Oh, from the candy man. Remember that creepy motherfucker that used to hang out at the elementary school? He's got a house, gives us all weed. No one suspected that guy. No one figured, hey, that dude's a little weird.
I will get into how corrupt the Houston police were, but I just think the Houston police honestly didn't give a fuck. That's
Yeah,
all
because
I
they all
can
thought it
say
was
about them.
runaways.
Yeah, and they just like when we go into like the investigation later on, you'll see exactly what I mean. So on August the 17th, 1971, Dean will kill Reuben Watson, who was 17. But he was kind of beginning to bore of the Robin to his Batman. In just 8 months, David Brooks had provided 8 victims, but he was now kind of running out of friends. He didn't have many to begin with. So in
You can find
walks
a more
Elmer.
popular kid. Yeah, that's what you
Yeah.
gotta find.
So Elmer was actually first introduced as a sacrificial lamb for Dean's cock. But Dean actually took a liking to the good-looking teen, and instead he decided to keep him. And he offered them the same deal he had given Brooks in the beginning, which was $200 for every boy that he could bring forward for the pedophile ring. He was now living at his Pasadena suburb home.
He also at one point said that he was involved in a white slavery ring. And this kid, Henley, was like, oh, that's cool. $200 is $200.
Yeah, don't worry about me.
Yeah.
Because Henley later said, Dean told me he would pay me $200 for every boy I could bring in, and maybe more if they were really good-looking boys. But in reality, Corll's a cheapskate, right? I mean, he's not making $200. That is a electrician job. So he'd actually only give the boys, Brooks and Henley, $5 or $10 if he did give them any money at all. Henley, he insisted that he initially refused the offer, but his family's financial hardship and not his like for having a threesome with murderers was what led him to accept it. But even when he was paid far less than he hoped, he didn't back out. And he actually, David Brooks said that Henley seemed flattered to be included.
They're part of a gang now. They got a team.
Yeah,
it's a team
well,
effort.
The 3 of them called themselves the Alliance of Evil. And they would drive around in Dean's Plymouth GTX muscle car, which also, speaking of Plymouth, Gacy also drove a Plymouth, but he drove an old.
You have a GTX? Oh, no, Gacy
A
didn't have a
GTX. Yeah, no, Gacy had an Oldsmobile.
Oh, an older Plymouth. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Or he would also drive around in the white company van, and they would bribe boys to get in using candy, alcohol, or drugs.
God, this guy just has to become creepier and creepier. Not only
Yeah,
does he
now
have a
he's got a
creepy
white
pedo
van.
house, he worked at a candy factory. They call him the Candy Man, and he passes candy out of his creepy rape van.
Yeah,
and
so
no one suspects this guy as being the
Speaking-
pedo killer.
of his creepy white van, it was actually on the inside, it was a roaming torture chamber set up on wheels. It had multiple pegboards inside. It was drilled that was
Jesus.
drilled with holes for nylon cords and handcuffs, and it was like kind of like a mock-up of his torture board, but on wheels. Like, what a sick fucker. And they would all
Yeah, I
drive
wonder what they
around in
drove
them.
around listening to.
I couldn't
I'm
see
hopefully
them.
Sabbath, but
You know,
I don't
it would be the rhubarb and custard theme tune. Da-na-na-na, na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na.
Oh.
And then yet more echoes of Gacy. Dean was also a big fan of the handcuff trick, the trick being that you had to be with the one with the key. And this would usually occur within minutes of the boys entering the vehicle.
What's interesting about this handcuff trick, but it is something that Gacy also
Did
employed. But
himself.
this was a ruse that Henley and Corll prepared. So Henley cuffed his own hands behind his back and then freed himself with the key hidden in the back pocket. So the kid's like, "Oh, you can escape from the cuffs. Let me give it a try." But then he had duped the youth into donning the handcuffs before observing Corll bind and gag him. Then Henley would leave the youth alone, believing that Corll was going to sell the kid into a sexual slavery ring.
Well, that's what he says.
Yeah. It's like, well, my work's done. I've done my little handcuff trick. I'm going to go grab a beer. See you guys, team.
Do what you want, Alliance
Yeah.
of Evil. By this point, the boys would then be taken back to the Pasadena shithole that Dean was living in. If they had families, if the boys weren't runaways, Dean would force them to write postcards home, often making them say that they were running away and not to bother looking for them. Then they would be starved for however long they were there, or given the bare amount of food or water or piss to survive on. He made them drink his own piss or their piss. Then Henley and Brooks, they would help Corll strip the boys naked. They would tape their mouths, bind their hands and legs, and they would fasten them to the torture board before all three raped them using their own cocks and various dildos, with a dildo that was double-ended and 18 inches long being found amongst his torture setup.
Oof.
The torture board was just intended for torture, and with Henley being described as extremely sadistic by Brooks, he would actually be a main cause of their pain. And the boys would be tortured for hours,
Yeah, I read that Henley assisted Corll Brooks in the abduction murder of two youths named Billy Balch and Johnny DeLome. In Brooks's confession later on, he stated that both youths were tied to Corll's bed, and after their torture and rape, Henley manually strangled Balch and then shouted, "Hey, Johnny," and shot DeLome in the forehead with the bullet exiting through the youth's ear. DeLome then was pleading with Henley, like, "Wayne, please don't," before he was strangled. And then both youths were buried at High Island Beach boathouse. But yeah,
Yes.
Henley was far more sadistic than Brooks. Both of them equally lacked any kind of sense of conscience or mercy.
Completely.
Yeah. But Henley, I think, actually received some kind of sadomasochistic, like sadistic pleasure from this.
Oh, I think he did too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes the boys would be there days before they would finally be killed, because Dean was very meticulous and ritualistic in his acts, which is common for serial killers. And it went unreported at the time the murders were discovered because it was deemed too gruesome for the ears of the public. Because this is before Bundy, this is before Gacy. He's like really kind of the first to do something on this level. So
It was a
for
few years
instance-
before Bundy, though, right? Like
Yeah,
Bundy
before
was
they
what,
took
late
over.
70s. This is like early
Yeah.
70s. Yeah.
So one of their favorite parts of their twisted torture game was to shove long glass tubes down the boys' urethras, and then they would break them off inside. Dean
Ugh.
would sometimes gnaw off the dicks of those that would upset him on the torture boards. Investigators kind of deduced this due to the wounds. It looked like the penis had been ripped off in one bite. And then after he'd ripped off the penis with his mouth, he would carefully wrap and preserve the genitals in a plastic bag that was found in the boat shed. Speaking of other disgusting things found in the boat shed, Dean, he would use either pliers or his fingernails. He would spend hours plucking the pubic hair out from his prepubescent victims. He intended to do this to kind of keep them awake for many hours, and bags of hair were found among the debris in the boat shed. Now, if Dean took a liking to one of his captives, he would release them from the board and he would force them into a box. The box, which was perhaps like the oddest handmade oddity in the murder room, it was a little smaller than a coffin, but it had air holes and his trusty nylon cords inside. It's not known how long the boys were forced to lay in this makeshift coffin, but it is known that he would use this box to like transport their dead bodies from his house to the boat shed. So the manner of death for the boys, it was usually all the same. They were either strangled or they were shot at close range. All three would participate in this act. Sometimes they would all have their hands wrapped around the throats of their victims. And I'm not going to deep dive into the psychology of why Corll preferred strangling right here. I think it's obvious. considering the brutality of what we've just talked about.
So I was reading that the frequency of the killings and the increase in the brutality exhibited by Dean Corll towards the victims was kind of like the way Brooks described it was like a bloodlust. Henley would say that they would instinctively know when Corll was to announce that
Ready.
he needed to do a new boy. Yeah, when he was like fiending to go kill a boy, due to the fact that he would appear restless, pacing, smoking cigarettes, and making like reflex movements.
Oh,
And so they're just like, oh, looks like we got to go get another one.
it's time for another victim. Who are we going to have next on the board? So in The Man with the Candy, Jack Olson, he details multiple occasions where Corll, he either shot someone in the chest or he had one of his teenage henchmen shoot a victim at point blank range. The victims, they were always left to bleed out. Sometimes as Corll continued to molest them, which is basically now pushing him into necrophilia territory. On one occasion, Wayne...
But is it that much worse? I mean, that's kind of expected.
No, I mean, fuck it. Like, what else is he going to do?
Look at all the other things you just did.
Yeah, it's not unexpected at all. On one explosion, Wayne, he accidentally shot a boy in the face, blowing off a portion of his jaw. Rather than just, put the boy out of his misery, they just let him there bleed out in Dean's torture room. And apparently it took about 2 days for him to finally bleed out and die. So
what did they do like during this time? Like the evil
probably just get high,
like watching TV.
Yeah, sucking each other off, getting high, talking. Although I don't think any of them had big brains enough to talk about anything. None of these guys are like reading Shakespeare to each other. So we've got the echoes of Manson, Gacy, and Dahmer, and like the BTK killer. One has to wonder why Corll, who is just as dangerous, if not more so, is on a higher canon, even though his body count is so high. One of the reasons I think is the same reason, like when you mentioned Bob Berdella before, we covered him in episode 74. He isn't as well known as Dean Corll for this reason, is because he didn't have a public trial or imprisonment. Dean Corll was dead before any of this madness became public knowledge, perhaps because the newspapers could only find a handful of grainy black and white pictures of Corll. He never gave an interview. And of course, the public would soon become fixated on the more media accessible killers who followed him in his wake, like Bundy, who crisscrossed the country, bludgeoning and strangling women to death, which in those days is like, homosexuality was still like a looked down upon thing here.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Good-looking ladies.
I think it's deviant if you're homosexual, whereas like Bundy was a ladies' man. Admittedly, I think he's a bit more charismatic too. So, Berdella, what was his body count? Is it known or is it?
Yeah, Berdella's wasn't very high. It was only about 6 or 7 victims. But Berdella was a torturer, and he got off on the sexual sadistic acts that he occurred, which is very much on par with what Corll was doing.
But Gacy had 33, so he actually had 5 more. As far as we know
of, yeah,
from Corll.
And Gacy also, because I just covered Gacy on Overkill, so you can hear about like the type of like components that Gacy rigged up in his house for torturing the boys. So next level serial killing. So we're going to get into how this absolute piece of shit died. So Henley had brought several of his friends to the slaughter, 9 in fact by this time, the youngest and last victim being 13-year-old James Stanton Dremiller, and he had been snatched off his bike by Elmer Wayne. But the Alliance of Evil, it's pretty much on his last legs now. Brooks was actually growing jealous of how Henley was Dean's new bestie, and he simply decided he wasn't gay anymore. He got a girl pregnant and he skipped town. Henley was still partying, huffing glue regularly and frequently at the 2020 Lama drive home. But then he did the most egregious thing possible, D. He tried to involve a clam in the sausage party.
Oh, I know all about that.
You do. You do. At around 3 a.m. on August the 8th, 1973, coming up to the anniversary, basically, Elmer, along with his fellow friends and fuck-ups, although they were nowhere near as fucked up as him, 19-year-old Timothy Cordell Curley and 15-year-old Rhonda Louise Williams. They were all sat in Dean's living room, getting high on weed, doing whippets, drinking some booze, and it didn't take long before all 3 of them passed out. having been enraged that Henley would bring a girl into his house because
How
as a gay
dare
man, how dare he? As a gay man, Dean cannot stand the sound of a woman's voice. And now here she is. She's broken up the boys' club, so he's plotting his revenge. After a
Corll?
few,
Well,
yeah,
Corll was furious that Henley had brought a girl to the house, telling him in private. Like he took him out. He took Henley in private, like in another room. He's like, "You ruined everything." And he explained. And so Henley was trying to say that Williams, I guess, got into a bad argument with her abusive father, and that's why she didn't wish to return home. And he's like, "I don't care. You ruined everything," which kind of echoes the feeling of
where have
a
I
few
heard
listeners,
this?
a few listeners to this podcast when
Ex-listeners.
yeah, when a new host came along, they're just like, "You've ruined everything. Podcast is between two men.
Men. I like listening to two men talk for
You
hours.
don't bring a woman into a boy's home."
Well, you don't, because this is what will happen to you, Dean.
He tainted the home. That's what happened.
So after a few hours, Elmer, he woke up, he was laying on his stomach, and Dean was slapping a pair of handcuffs on him this time. His mouth was taped shut and his ankles were tied together. The same treatment had been applied to his friends, but Timothy had been stripped naked.
Whoa.
Seeing that his
Tables
friend,
have turned.
yeah, fellow rapist and child molester had awoken, Dean removed the gag from Henley's mouth. And, Henley is now obviously pleading for his life. He's pleading for his friend's life. Suddenly, like, the murder, death, kill shoot's on the other foot, and he doesn't like it, of course, naturally. Corll again stated how he was angry with Henley for replacing a man on a podcast with a woman, and that he was going to kill all 3 teenagers because of this. That's exactly what he said. He said, "You've replaced a man with a woman on a podcast, and I don't like change, and I don't like the ladies. This is going to be it now."
A lot of people had that same sentiment.
Man, you blew it.
Can't say I blame
that
them.
girl. Yeah, this
You
sounds like
blew it.
some of our
You blew
reviews.
it.
Man, you blew it bringing that girl. Your best years are behind you now. I'm going to kill you all, but first, I'm going to have my fun. That's how I imagined he said it. I'm going to have my fun. Henley managed to actually convince Dean. It took him a while. It took him about half an hour to
30
untie
minutes
him.
of discussion. Like he had 30
They
minutes to
went
convince him. I
out.
would love to know what he said.
Well, whatever it is, it worked because Dean untied him.
He did.
And together they would rape and murder his friends. But this time, it kind of wasn't going to end that way. So there's a little clip of Elmer talking to the local news station at the time.
Me up and took them into a bedroom and strapped them to the board. Strapped Tim on his stomach, spread eagle on the board, and strapped Rhonda beside the board beside Tim on her back. First, he wanted Tim to take Rhonda, but Tim couldn't or he wouldn't or something. And so he wanted me to take her, and he was going to mess with Tim.
Henley's.
Yeah. So he's describing the scene of what was actually about to happen.
You can hear the cadence of the man there as well.
But Henley must have done like the secret Alliance of Evil handshake or something and totally convinced them, like, we're going to murder together. Go team.
Yeah.
Captain Planet.
And the way that Henley states it from now on is that his murder of the serial killer is actually what makes him a hero. Dean rushed at Henley because Henley had managed to get hold of the pistol, and he held it at the naked pederast, and he shouted, "I can't go on any longer. I can't have you kill all my friends." That's what he sounds
Doesn't
like.
sound like him at all, but
That was
yeah.
totally what he sounds like.
Suspending my disbelief, and I'm thinking that this English girl from the north of England can actually do an accent of a guy from Texas. But
well, you maybe should have got a man on the podcast who could
you
do.
you
Texas
blew it.
accent.
You blew it.
I
Dude.
blew
You
it.
ruined everything.
So, yeah, like he was saying this like he wasn't bringing all his friends to be murdered in the first place.
What was weird about it is that he convinced Henley convinced Corll to untie him, and then he was just like, "All right, you take her, I'll do him."
What,
Go
half
team.
Yeah.
And then it was at that point that Henley, which actually was Rhonda Williams, who was just like kind of looking at him, was just like, "Aren't you going to do something? Are you going to let this happen?" And it was that moment that Henley like decided to make it stop. It's like, I can't go on any longer. And that's when he grabbed the gun
yeah.
and pointed it at Corll.
So Corll, who was naked because he was getting ready to rape, he approached Elmer saying, "Kill me, Wayne. You won't do it." That's how I imagine he sounds.
All right.
Well,
Once again, not even close, but that's
you,
fine.
you'll blow this chance like you did. Well, Elmer Wayne Henley, he fired one shot from the 22 caliber pistol at Corll's forehead, although it failed
called
to
his bluff.
penetrate. Yeah, it failed to penetrate his thick skull, though. Must be like no one at me about guns. I don't know anything about guns, but I know that it's quite a low caliber pistol. But you
Yeah,
can kill someone
22.
with
You
22.
could kill, especially that close. You could definitely kill somebody.
Yeah. So he would fire 5 rounds into his ex-lover and friend, and Dean would die naked, bleeding out against the hallway wall, outside the room where other teens had been bound and where other teens had ended their lives in a brutal fashion and had been carried out wrapped in plastic. Henley actually said that his first immediate thought was that Dean would have been proud of him for the way that he had behaved during the confrontation because he had kept his cool. And Dean had been training him to act quickly in those types of circumstances. And that's exactly what he did.
God, he's kind of like Dexter or something, like training, other people to be
Other
a killer.
killers.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
do you remember that? I forget what season that was when Dexter had like his accomplice and they
Is that-
both kind of worked together.
Is
It
that the
was
third
terrible.
season? Is that after the fire season? The fire
Yeah, I
game?
think it was the third season after the fire season. I stopped watching at that point. But it's interesting because Dean, had military training, although I don't think he really saw any kind of combat or anything.
He did not at all.
I think he dodged the draft because he said he's like, I gotta work at the candy store with my mom.
Yeah, he dodged the
Um,
draft, but he didn't dodge the pork sword. That's
Yeah,
what he
but I
went
mean,
away to the army for.
but I think he was like, obviously grooming these kids, but also training them to like have his back. When
Yeah.
he's like, you never know, they might try to escape or something, and gotta bust a
You
cap in
gotta
their
get him
ass.
back. We all know that Henley isn't the hero here. He untied his friends, and they all kind of came to a group decision to call the police. And now the stage is set for the investigation into the most prolific and brutal cases of a murder in American history. Together with Brooks, he actually led the police to where nearly all the bodies were buried in their 3 separate locations. All the bodies were found with their hands bound, naked, wrapped in plastic, all had lime poured over them, obviously to help speed decay. There was various states of decomposition were noted, with some bodies being fully skeletonized and some the flesh clung to their bones like jelly. Not that the Houston police actually really did a good investigation. It was botched from the get-go. When they entered that wretched boat shed with the putrefying smell, they'd never seen anything like it before. Not many local cops had ever dealt with a case like this. And then they actually knew that they couldn't make a proper investigation. So instead of calling in maybe a governing body to oversee it, they just said, fuck it. They honestly just said, fuck it, we'll do it ourselves. Vital evidence, such as a bike that had belonged to a victim, mementos, clothing, anything that was found on top of the soil in the boat shed, they just chucked it out. They had no need for it.
Houston's finest.
Houston's finest, people. And instead of bringing in properly trained forensic professionals like they did in the Gacy case they did with Bundy, they just bust in some actual prisoners from the nearby jail. Instead of giving them the proper tools needed for digging up dead bodies, which are traditionally made of wood, so you don't ruin the skeleton, they just gave them garden shovels. And they were like, have at it, lads. Just dig a hole. You're in jail.
I mean, in their defense, though, it's not like they've dealt with many serial murders like this.
Yeah, but then exactly. So then wouldn't you call in like the FBI and be like, we kind of need
you'd
some
think
help.
After 28 murders or 27 kids that have gone missing or they started finding bodies, you'd think they would call in the professionals at this point.
But they're not gonna. It didn't take long for the first body to be found. And then another and another. And within a week, 17 bodies have been recovered from the boathouse shed, 10 bodies from High Island Beach and in the woods near Lake Sam Rayburn.
Well, they went to Corll's home after this.
Yeah.
And it is at his home address. They found a large hunting knife, rolls of clear plastic of the same type used to cover the floor. So he made like a kill room.
He was
a portable
meticulous.
radio, rigged to a pair of dry cells to give increased volume. So maybe
to stop
while
the screams.
camouflage the screams. An electric motor with loose wires attached, 8 pairs of handcuffs, a number of dildos, thin glass tubes. We all know what those are used for, and lengths of rope.
Mhm.
And then in his Ford Econoline van, the creepy white rape van where you used to drive around and hand out candy. They also kind of conveyed a similar impression. The rear windows of the van were sealed by opaque blue curtains. Nothing creepy about that. In the rear of the vehicle, they found a coil of rope, a swatch of beige rug covered in soil stains, and a wooden crate with air holes drilled in the sides. The pegboard walls inside the rear of the van were rigged with several rings and hooks, and there was another wooden crate with air holes drilled in the sides there in Corll's backyard. And inside this crate were strands of human hair and blood.
Right. So yeah, this is like several. He loved making these boxes, these boy boxes.
Yeah, these like boy coffin boxes or something.
I'm gonna start calling my my pussy the boy coffin box.
Yeah, where dicks go to die.
Where dicks go to die.
But was this like something like you're on timeout? Like if you weren't like giving head properly or something, it's like going to the box.
Yeah, you're going
in
the
box.
I actually think it's the opposite. I think if he liked you, he would put you in the coffin until he was ready to go again. And then he would get you out the coffin and put you back on the board.
God, how is that like he likes you? It's just like, oh, let's prolong this torture.
Yeah, he's a sick fuck and I'm glad he's dead. He's dead. So police didn't find the remains of the 28th victim until 1983. And as it goes, there's still one victim left unidentified, with the second to last unknown victim. He was only identified through DNA testing in 2011. But there's actually no way to know if there will ever be more victims or not. So in the Jack Olson book, Dean's mother claims that there must be more victims. There's some must be buried under the floors of their old candy factory. But the police, they're not taking these claims seriously. They won't be investigating anything soon, which is not a shock considering it's the Houston police.
I'm surprised they haven't reopened this. I mean, the property's still there. The boat sheds are still there. Like, I'm surprised they haven't like, you know, a Netflix documentary isn't like, let's go find the more victims of the Candyman.
Netflix will never cover Dean Corll because they can't make money off this. This is too torturous. So speaking of the police, the Houston police, after the bungled investigation came to light and the murders and the disappearance of so many young boys hit the public attention, the police chief, he was finally voted out first chance they got.
Not surprised.
Yeah, well, Henley, he was convicted of 6 murders and sentenced to 6 life sentences. Brooks was convicted of 1 murder and he received a life sentence as well.
I don't understand how that guy was convicted of just 1 murder.
Because it's all speculation with Brooks because he wasn't around at the time of being caught. Whereas they probably did have some vital evidence for Henley.
Here's a picture of old Brooks.
Old man Brooks.
Yeah.
Brooks never publicly spoke on the case, and his lips remained tightly sealed on his thoughts regarding the whole scenario that he found himself participating in. Henley, on the other hand, he turned into a total chatty Cathy. He was giving as many interviews as he could. He had his own Facebook page to promote his very mediocre art, and he actively downplayed his sadistic acts and roles in the crimes. And he changed his story many, many, many times.
I like the idea of his like fantasy here that he's the hero.
I think
he's like, yo, yeah, you know, I might have killed some boys, might have raped a few, might have tortured a few, but I'm a hero because I saved my friends in the end. Like, what was he thinking was going to happen?
Well, he still kept saying throughout his whole chatty Cathy time in prison, my only regret is that Dean isn't here now, so I could tell him what a good job I did killing him.
I love the actor that played him that played Henley in Mindhunter. People have seen Mindhunter. I know you don't like it, but it's a pretty, I think it's an enjoyable show.
Is his accent as good as mine?
Well, he's also English. He's from Game of Thrones. But he is exactly how I pictured Wayne Henley to look like. But it was also like, you know, he was so willing to talk for hours to the FBI, like just very chatty about it, almost like proud of what happened.
Yeah, he wanted to be included.
Yeah.
So I think it's funny how he's like, oh yeah, I want to tell Dean what a good job I did killing him. Well, you had to shoot him 6 fucking times. That's not a good job. A good job to me of killing someone with a gun is to shoot them once in the head. Boom, they're dead.
Maybe he's not a good shot.
Luckily for all of us, for everyone in mankind, finally COVID did something good for us. He died in May of 2020, a victim of the COVID. And
David
funnily enough,
Brooks did.
David
Yeah,
Brooks
David
did as
Brooks
well.
died. Yeah.
He
Did
died
wait? Did Henley die from
yeah,
COVID?
he died in May of 2020, and
Oh,
so did
wow.
David Brooks. They died.
Oh, I didn't realize they both died from the COVID.
Yeah, separate.
That's
Total
great.
separate. Yeah, isn't that great news? So they're
Yeah.
both fucking dead. So
Yeah.
there's much to be said about Brooks and Henley. Yeah, they were groomed by Dean Corll, and they are in some ways victims. But even though Houston, it was certainly a rundown city with high levels of teen runaways and crime, only they chose to bring boys to be fucked, tortured, and murdered by Dean. And not only that, but they participated throughout the whole thing. And if Henley hadn't have confessed at that time, chances are they probably would have gotten away with it. Those pesky pederasts. And
Yeah.
I think
I think it's interesting the way Henley and his friends are like, they all got together like, let's just go to the police. Like, I wonder if if Henley thought the police would be like, you're a hero because you saved the day.
I
Or
think
do you
so.
think, or do you think the first thing, as soon as they went to the police, these kids are like, dude, this guy, you should see his friend and his whole little alliance of evil and the secret handshake and the torture board. Lock this guy up.
I can't
then-
explain that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Well,
tell
then
the
I think he
truth.
tried to, and it just got worse and worse. Then he, called out Brooks.
So I think Dean will always remain a mystery. The Houston mass murders, it's kind of a rabbit hole of lots of unanswered questions. And the more time that passes, the less likely it is that any of these questions will be answered. And as of 2018, there's still several missing, identified and unidentified, and possible but uncertain victims of Corll. Most famously, there's the boy in the box Polaroid.
Oh yeah, I actually have a picture of that. Terrible. I think I showed it earlier, but
I think you did, yeah. So the investigators, they actually cut short the search for more graves. And even in the final grave that they dug up, there were two bones that didn't belong to any of the other bodies that I had recovered. So like there's more evidence of that. There's only 3 people who can end the mystery, and now all of them are dead. As of today in the Heights area, there's a whole new generation of young professionals. They've torn down some of the old bungalows that once stood there. They've made it into an urban nightmare village of yoga studios, coffee shops, and townhouses. Nothing is remembered of Dean Corll. There's no plaque to mention that the boys died there. Some of the current residents, the ones that have heard about the trio's rampage, they actually assume that it's a bizarre urban legend that began and ended during the Nixon administration. Sadly, in this
Well.
case, it isn't the pasty. The bones of the dead missing teen boys, they probably lay beneath their feet as they sip their chai lattes and they check their Twitter feeds, and they see that Ted Cruz has called out a lefty troll for his evil Jewish twisted soul ways. And they won't realize that the face of Dean Corll was the last face that some 28 young boys, probably more, saw as they gasped their final breaths.
Here's a picture of a few of the boys there. And
Handful
then
of
it's
them.
the craziest thing is like they're all like buddies of the two accomplices. It's
Yeah.
I can't really think of too many. I mean, there's duos and there's couples, but how many serial killers that had like two little henchmen working for them, two toadies going out and getting the boy? Like, you go out $200, bring the boys back.
Not many outside of like a criminal organization. Although I bet what'll happen is I'll remember one in like 4 hours time and I'll be, God damn it, I could have talked about that killer too.
I've read that when I was doing research on this, that the Houston police, like a few years later, found a box of like they raided a suspected pedophile, and they found a box of Polaroids that had pictures of some of the victims
Yes.
of Dean Corll. So they suspected that the way Corll was like, I'm involved in a pedophile ring or white slavery ring, he might not have been lying. And that could have been going on at the time.
Yeah.
He could have like, maybe he made extra money dealing boys or buying boys from these rings.
I was also reading that so there's obviously still a lot of kids missing from that time period and that era. These parents are still alive and they regularly write the Houston police to be like, please, can you open up the investigation into my son? Or can you run DNA against some of the bones that were found? And the Houston police are just like, no, we're not going to do
I'm
that.
really surprised that government agency or even like like some kind of watchdog group or something hasn't tried to like uncover the identity of these victims.
I think it would be a monetary issue because if it turned out that these were victims of Dean Corll after so long, they could sue. They could sue big time.
Yeah, maybe Ted Cruz should do it. He knows a lot about Dean Corll. He really
knows
does.
a lot about Twisted Souls.
And thank you, Senator Cruz, for inspiring us to cover this wonderful topic here on episode 801 of the Sick and Wrong podcast. I'm a twisted soul. God,
So proud.
I'm gonna have that on my grave. I'm gonna put that on my grave. I'm gonna make sure it's on my grave. Anyway, people, this is 801 here of Sick and Wrong. We have some phone calls coming up next. If you want to check out Sick and Wrong News, you got to go to the Patreon page for that. And on that note, before we get to phone calls, here's a promo about our Patreon page.
Just gonna go grab another beer. It's getting hot.
You getting a beer?
Get another beer. I need to put my glasses off.
Is it really fucking hot there?
It's hot as fuck in the UK.
Hot as shit.
Hot as fuck.
Ba-da-ba-ba. It is fucking bloody hot. It really is. Here?
Get another beer. I need to put my glasses.
Normal time. Wow, I love this guy, Fart Fucker. It's amazing. I want to double stuff that cunt. I'm thinking he's referring to Kate, but he might be referring to me. I would be flattered, but I think he's referring to Kate. Wait. Oh, okay. At first.
Yeah, Z, but aren't you used to this heat? The point is we're not used to it in Britain.
I like this guy that's saying fart fucker. Isn't that amazing? You see that?
Mm-hmm.
I want to double stuff that cunt.
He wants to double stuff you, and I'm the fart fucker.
But he's written it like 20 times. I want to know more about Richard Stallman.
Don't encourage it.
No, but I think it's funny. It's like this guy is like, I'm just going to go to live stream. Do you think he searches for live stream so he can write fart fucker in the chat?
Yeah.
Mike, I agree with you. I thought Mindhunter was enjoyable. I kind of liked it. And the dude that played Ed Kemper, dead on. There were a couple killers.
Mindhunter. Watch the real interviews.
Exactly, which you can do, but it's more than that. And I've explained this to you. It's a dramatization. It's more of just it's more about just interviews with killers. It's about the genesis of the whole
there's
John
a great
Douglas's
book
whole
about that.
Mindhunter.
Yeah, but there's another book about that. I've got it. I'm trying to.
Douglas wrote Mindhunter.
No, but there's also another book about the start of that that's not written by him.
Oh, it's written by someone else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. And the guy that played Manson, I hated that guy. I just thought that was, I don't know.
Well,
I just thought the guy tried so hard. Yeah, maybe you'd have been like, oh, that's an apt characterization because he's a fucking cock, and and so is Manson. But the guy that played Kemper reminded me exactly what I pictured Kemper to look like. The dude that played Henley, that actor, I forget which dude he was in Game of Thrones, but he played
I
him up.
just don't need like
perfect.
murder dramatized. This is my main thing. I don't watch any of those shows. I don't need
You didn't
like
like Silence of the Lambs?
Besides the Lambs isn't a real murder. That's a fake character.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
it's
need
based. It's a
real
composite character.
Yeah, of like 10 different murderers. I don't need real murderers. Like Ed Kemper's still alive. I can watch an Ed Kemper interview and find that way more fascinating.
I don't know. I liked. Yeah, that's. But that's what I'm saying. I agree with
It's
Mike there.
different
It did-
strokes for different folks. Like
I
we all
kind of like the
different shit.
idea of how like they developed it, like the whole thing with the Atlanta murders of those black kids.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting the way they went in
Oh.
there and like they got behind the investigation, having to deal with these like redneck cops. I don't know. I mean, it was a drama in the end more, and
There's a
serial
really good-
killers were just a portion of it.
Podcast about the Atlanta child murders, Mike, if you've not heard it. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called. I'm sure if you type in
I like
Atlanta
Gino.
child murders.
Kate likes her stuff raw.
Yeah, baby, I like it raw. Yeah, baby, I like it raw.
You know, I watched the movie Zola last night. I think we were talking about this earlier, me and Kate. But have you guys heard of the movie Zola? It's kind of a new movie. It came out recently. It's like a stripper movie. A24, you know that studio. I forget what else they've done, but it's kind of like indie movies. It's done really well. It's people are kind of raving about it. I had some issues. With that movie. I had some issues. So it's a stripper movie. It's about these strippers that go on a road trip. Very faithful road trip. I mean, a lot of shit happens. There's pretty fucked up. I did like the way they showed like a stripper's life in a sense. But what pissed me off about this movie is a movie about two strippers, like one super like ghetto white chick, and then this like incredibly hot black chick. Actually, she was super hot. But they're both dancers, and they showed several scenes in the dressing room, several scenes when they're on stage. Not once did they show titties. Not once did they. Well, they did show ass, but like from like an upwards view, looking
Yeah, so
down
you've
while
not
they were
seen
taking
full
a
ass.
piss. Yeah, they were taking like a piss. Like that's the one time. But yet they must have showed 20 dicks, at least 20 dicks, like
Gross.
full frontal male nudity. But they didn't even show a pair of titties. The movie, I mean, whatever. It's all right.
Well, I watched
I didn't hate
Showgirls today, which is one of the greatest films ever
They
made.
show a lot of ass in that. That's for
So I
sure.
can show a lot of ass and a lot of titty. But then I also watched Pig, the new Nicolas Cage film this week. I don't know
Pig.
what
Was that good?
I don't know what people are raving about.
Has it been getting good reviews?
Yeah, it's been getting like critically acclaimed reviews, and I don't know why.
Well,
I'm
Is it
gonna
a
watch
John
it.
Wick type thing? That's what I thought it was. You go crazy
That's what you walk in expecting. You expecting to be like a John Wick type of scenario. And it's the total opposite of that. I've probably never listened to a film with more talking in it for years.
Kate hates talking.
At the end, I was just like, I wish everyone would shut the fuck up in this film. There's
More
just
murder.
so much fucking talking, and it's not for me.
Kate's favorite Punisher is the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, which I actually watched this week.
I love the Dolph Lundgren Punisher.
You know, I gotta
He's
say, I
my
really
favorite.
enjoyed it. I
It's
do think
funny.
it's like kind of broaching racism, which is maybe why you like it so much. But it definitely was pretty racist against Japanese people. That's for sure.
That's why I love it.
But I liked it because it was like they had the Yakuza, it had the Italian mobsters. I wouldn't say Dolph plays my favorite Punisher.
No, that's Thomas Jane, hands down.
Yeah, I thought Thomas Jane played a good Punisher.
Yeah, Cage gives a great performance in Pig, but it's fucking boring. It's up there with one of the most boring films I've ever watched. I also didn't like the way it was shot or looked. So that doesn't help me. If Nick Cage hadn't have been in it, I would not have watched it and I would have turned it off.
Nick Cage, though, is doing he just does a bunch of these just like random movies.
He has to pay
a lot of them.
alimony.
Was that why he's
Yeah, he's got like 5
does all these?
ex-wives. They all want his money, so he's got to pay his alimony. And plus, he wants to buy Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, maybe that's he probably buys like
I
issue
love the
1,
man.
2
I'll
of
watch-
Spider-Man.
He does. He owns.
I
like,
won't
nearly
watch
all of them.
anything of Nick Cage. Like I had no really intentions of watching Pig, and there's a bunch of other movies. I'm like the one they did with like the looks like Meet the Feebles. Willy's
is that the-
Wonderland.
Oh, I watched that. I was stoned, and that's good for a one-time watch.
Is it? All right, maybe I'll give it. Is it horror? Like, what is it?
Yeah, it's like a kind of funny horror. He's really good in it. He's really good in that, and he's again the only saving grace in that film. But I mean, nothing is going to top Mandy. I think he should have won a
Con
fucking
Air.
Oscar. I love Con Air, but in Mandy is peak Nicholas. It's his best.
That is
performance.
Mandy's a great movie. I've seen that a few
Best film
times.
of the last decade. I
I do
Mandy
enjoy
all the
Con
time.
Air though.
Well, I just watched Con Air recently.
Con Air is a great movie. Steve Buscemi's character is the best.
He's so good.
So creepy, isn't it?
He is
Yeah.
when he's at the little girl's like tea party.
they're like having a tea party. Yeah. All right. Let's get this thing going here.
Yeah, Dolph speaks. Dolph speaks in The Punisher.
Yeah, but he just doesn't. I don't know. I mean, he kind of almost sounds like he's playing Drago.
Yeah, if he dies, he
break
dies.
If he dies, he dies. My favorite thing about Dolph is like cruising on his Harley, like through the sewers. And then there's that like Shakespearean
amazing.
actor, the drunkard that's like a Shakespearean actor guy. Remember that?
Oh, I can't remember that, but it's not Ian McKellen.
Yeah,
is it?
that's his buddy that like tells him about like he knows what the mafia is up to.
Oh,
So
yeah,
his buddy's this like drunk actor.
I thought you meant in
But
real
he
life.
speaks in rhymes. No, in the movie. It was really funny. There's a part where the actor gets thrown out of a bar, and then like you see this like remote control car cruising up, and it's got a bottle of bourbon in the back, and it's cruising up to him. And he sees it, and he's like, "What?" And he's on the ground because he just got thrown out of the bar. And he gets up, and he starts chasing after the bottle. And it comes, and he's like, looks up, and he's like right at the Punisher's chest. And the Punisher's like, "Where are they tonight?" And he's just like, "Well, in the darkness they awake, and in the mind they often take. They're at the harbor." And it's all in rhymes. And so I don't know how this dude, this homeless actor guy, knows what the mafia is up to, but he does.
He's got word on the street. If you had to pick between Face Off or Con Air, what are you picking? Because I'm picking Con Air.
Con Air. I like Con Air. Con Air is better. It had Malkovich in it.
Face Off is really boring.
Yeah.
It's really long. I watched it a couple of
I thought
years
it was
back.
just kind of lame, and I hated how they kept switching faces again. And finally, I'm just like, I don't even give a shit whose face you even have on at this point.
I will say that both Nick Cage and John Travolta give amazing performances in that film, but it's way too long, and ultimately it gets really boring towards the end.
Yeah, I wasn't that into it.
I've seen it. It's just too long and boring.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gino.
All right. Let's get some calls here. So we got a few calls to get to here. 323-522-4032 is the sick and wrong drunk dial line number. Remember, people, you don't have to call the drunk dial line. You can email us, sickandwrongpodcast@gmail.com, or you can even send in a Facebook voice message. A lot of people have been doing that recently.
To either of us.
The first call we have here is from Naughty Nurse. Naughty Nurse used to call in every now and then.
Oh, gee. You and your sick and wrong messages. I like this one. This is a good one. Anyways, I want to call in and confirm a lot of Kate's things that she said. Number one, Ted Cruz in the White House. It's a fucking real thing. So I'm a nurse. The best part about being a nurse is I work with a lot of other women that have really sick senses of humor.
Nice.
So I just was asking them one day, about Ted Cruz in the White House.
Ted Cruz in the White House. Is that? I'm trying to think of what she's referring to.
It's Vartin, isn't it?
Oh,
That's what
okay.
is.
No, I remember now. Was it Walden Scott? What listener called in and was listening off, or was it
my fake mom?
Your fake mom that said Ted Cruz in the White House?
Can I say shout out to all the nurses that listen to this show? You do a job that I could never do, and I think you should all be paid a lot more.
But I love their sick and wrong sense of humor.
I do.
I
do. I always love nurses. Every time I've ever had to go to hospital, I've always been like, the nurses treat you so much better. And no,
I think you
more.
develop, deviant sense of humor
Well,
just
you
to
got
fucking
to.
deal with that shit.
You couldn't deal with it without a sick sense of
It
humor.
must have maybe it was your fake mom.
I'm
who's
sure it was
also
my
a nurse
she had
who
loads of
said
funny
that it was
ones.
Ted Cruz in the White House. But that is probably one of the best. That's up there with Santorum. You remember that, Rick Santorum?
No, what was that?
Rick Santorum is another cunt of a politician. He's a fucking asshole, that guy. Religious fucking dick, just like Ted Cruz. But Rick Santorum, I think, was trying to he was definitely fighting against gay marriage, fighting against abortion, just an asshole. And so Dan Savage from Savage Love, that guy's great. He came up with a competition to name what is the term Santorum? Like, what does Santorum mean? And so it was a competition. And what actually won, it was like Santorum is the mixture of fecal matter, blood, and cum that is the byproduct of anal sex. It's like after gay men have anal sex, that
Is the
is
Santorum.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Actually,
like
it doesn't have to be gay men. It could be anyone who has anal sex. You produce Santorum. And then at one point, if you search for Santorum, that would come up top on Google on Google and Santorum's like personal page was underneath it. It was great.
The
But
power
Ted
of the
Cruz in the
people.
White House, same level of humor. I love that.
It is.
And they all confirmed Ted Cruz in the White House is a fucking thing. It's totally normal.
Vagina
And,
for
you
bubble.
know, it's been going on since you're like a kid. That's, you're like, oh, what's that? Feels like bubbles in my pants.
That guy is a shit stain in your fucking panties. That dude.
Yes, the Ted Cruz in the White House continues to be in the White House up until this day. Also, Kate is right about Putin being fucking sexy, dude. I don't know. I never really noticed him until he was like shirtless on the horse, and fuck, super
Thank you.
fuckable. Like, I know
Yes.
it's terrible. Probably gonna be on a no-fly list after this, but Putin's fucking sexy. There it is. I don't care who knows about it. And a note about peacocks.
Wow, that is kind of funny. Yeah, Kate, don't you've had wet dreams about Putin.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like sometimes I get drunk and I say shit on this show and I forget about it, and then people message me and they go, "Remember when you said this? Ha ha ha!" I'm like, "No, I don't remember." But I stand by Putin being very sexy. The man has an allure about him, and it's not just me. There's memes about him being sexy. He loves animals too, which I totally think helps the situation because he would
So
give he'd buy you a puppy after.
Would you give up the pooter to Putin?
Do you know what? Yeah, he's only my height too, so his cock can't be that big.
What you avoid big cocks?
But up the pooter, yeah, you don't want a big cock up there. It's just gonna make it. It's gonna be bad in about 20 years' time, isn't it? But he's my height. He's 5'4". He's a very small man, yet he is so majestic on the torso.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know how Putin likes it, but
He likes up the
it's
pooter.
interesting that he has all these female fans.
And male.
So I live in Central California. There is a park area with a residence kind of like to the right of it. The park is open, but there's probably at least a dozen peacocks and peahens just kind of, looking around for people to give them snacks. So I took my partner's parents there. They're old people love peacocks, and old people always have snacks in their car. So we got out of the car, they started giving them potato chips, and someone from one of the houses ran out, started yelling at us "Stop feeding the peacocks, stop." Because, peacocks can indeed be a nuisance, because I think they're just shitting all over this guy's yard, and they are super loud. However,
what if this guy called for a hit on one of those peacocks?
Just fuck off. Learn to live with them. Just get over it.
Get a fucking pit bull or something to guard your yard.
Do you know what? I've lived in some shit fucking apartments where they've been right on pretty much main roads where trucks are flying by nearly 20 hours a day, and I can sleep through that. Don't be a pussy. It's a fucking peacock. Get over it.
I would be more upset about the shit in my yard. If there's a whole I don't know, what's a gaggle of peacocks cruising around just shitting all over my yard. Yeah, I would be pissed about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't care.
Never condone killing a peacock or a peahen, because peacocks are amazing.
Yes.
Anyways, I love you guys. Thank you for doing Sick and Wrong, and congratulations on 800 episodes. Keep it sick, keep it wrong, and have a good day. Bye.
Thank you there, naughty nurse. I appreciate it.
Yeah, she rocks.
Yeah. Get this woman a peacock.
I want a peacock. Me and her should go over to Russia to go and see Putin, and I'm sure they have peacocks there. We can do like a double. Go and see a peacock,
have
and then
peacocks
we'll
in Russia?
then we'll double team Putin.
Yeah. I'm
He'd
sure
like
Putin
it.
would be down.
Totally.
I know Putin definitely. I think there's a lot of
Oh,
women.
he shags.
There's a lot of women that sexualize Putin. I think
And
he's
men.
like. I'm sure there's a lot of men too that do as well, but I think a lot of women, like with a man who's attractive like Putin, I kind of am like, oh yeah, I could see that. But women, I think it's really funny that women are like about this like Russian guy who's kind of evil. It's like he's almost like a bad boy. Is that what it is that you're
Yeah, he's like
attracted to?
a James Bond villain, but he's just very
Yeah.
short.
He's like, how tall is he?
He's 5'4". He's my
Oh.
height, D.
Are you into like
Me.
Kim Jong Un?
No.
I
I don't want a chunky
He's a bad boy. He's like a Bond villain.
No, I don't want a chunky.
Oh, he's too
big
chunky?
boy. He's too chunky. I want Putin with a puppy on like his horse as he gallops towards me. He's like,
All right, if you had to choose one, Joe Biden or Boris Johnson?
ew,
Just
to
a
shag.
blowy.
To give a blowy, Biden.
You do Biden over Boris Johnson?
Yeah, because Boris is ginger.
Yeah, but Joe Biden's dick probably looks like the Crypt Keeper's dick.
Do you think he can even get a stiffy anymore? We all know that Boris can, but like, do you think Biden could?
Viagra's a hell of a drug.
It'd be like sucking on a chipolata.
Just like a puff of air comes out. Anyway, moving on. Here is another call, also referring to episode 800. Some congrats from a longtime listener.
Hey, Dee. Congratulations on 800 episodes. I've been a listener since the early days. I think I found From the Ville first and then stumbled across Sick and Wrong from there.
We were sister podcasts.
You
It's
were.
robust.
I think it's very funny because I've obviously been listening.
Sisters in arms.
When I've been listening to From the Ville, and sometimes like you or Wackerly will pop up, and you both sound like babies. You both sound like your fetuses in the womb, just like full of praise and promise. And
I think I still sound like a baby. Yeah, but back then though, I was like naive and optimistic. Now I'm just bitter.
now you're a twisted
A
soul.
bitter old twisted soul. That's what I
Yeah.
am.
You guys resonated with me because you reminded me of my friends back in high school and college. I've had to keep your podcast as a secret pleasure as a woman in my mid-50s now. Can't really go around telling people that I listen to this shit.
I do find this hilarious when people say this, especially like middle-aged people. It's like, it's my dirty little secret.
But like the show's quite long. How do you describe to like your friends and your family when they're like, "Where do you go for 2 hours every Monday?" They're like, "I'm just
Yeah,
walking
she's probably
around.
at work. She's probably at work.
Yeah.
And she's listening to it at work, you know. But I can the thing is, I can understand that. Like, I don't, to be honest, I don't want people at my work knowing about it. Like, I usually try to keep it on the DL if I can.
I'm half and half. I found that note. You can tell people you listen to a podcast and they still won't listen anyways. So I don't really care.
I think it's also case by case basis. If it's someone I know that might dig it, then I'll tell them about it.
Yeah, I kind of do that.
Yeah.
No telling what they'd think of me. But thanks for all the many hours of entertainment. You've gotten me through some difficult times in life, through cancer treatments and a shitty
wow.
divorce. But keep up the great work and the great podcast. I loved Wackerly and Harrison, and Kate's doing a great job. So I hope you do many more years. Keep it sick, keep it wrong, and lick my balls.
Yay!
Well, I'm gonna make a little clip out of that. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank
also-
you for listening all these years. Seriously, it's awesome.
Yeah. Fuck your ex-husband.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know where I wrote this. I don't know if it's on the Patreon page or if it's the bio on our website, but I was writing like sick and wrong kind of has been the constant in a lot of people's lives. In the fluctuation, the changes, the tumultuous lives that people lead, especially over 15 years. It's like Sick and Wrong is just something that's been here. I mean, it's here every week. I've never skipped a week. We've done it every week. People's lives change, relationships end, you know, their pets die. It's like, but but in the end, every Monday, you get a new episode of this terrible podcast to listen to.
You're like a Harry Nilsson song. I'll be there.
I guess kind of, yeah. But I mean, it's been a constant in many people's lives, and and I think that is another thing that actually inspires me too. It's like a lot of people are like, you kind of distracted me from some of the fucked up shit I got to deal with on a regular basis. It's an hour and a half where I guess don't have to think about that. So that's cool. Totally. Dirty little secret. That's what Sick and Wrong is. All right, here's the last call that doesn't have anything to do about congratulations for 800 episodes. It's Twisted Firestarter.
I love him.
With a story about getting arrested.
Oh, I love it.
This is the Twisted Firestarter speaking. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for picking me as the winner of your virginity story contest. And thank you, Dee, for the self-lubricating asshole you sent me. I have used it. I didn't give it away like I think it was the wad.
Did you send him a self-lubricating asshole?
Yeah, it was like a I don't know if it was like more of like a fleshlight or no, it was definitely like an asshole fleshlight. I think it was like an asshole that you could fuck, but it looked kind of like a fleshlight. And I was like, who could use this? Twisted Firestarter could use this.
I'm impressed that he used it, and he was like,
I think it was like a porn star's asshole. Like it was fashioned after like a famous porn star's asshole.
That's a total thing, isn't it?
Glad you enjoyed it.
Well done.
I'll be honest with you, it's a bit tight for my liking. I'm not trying to claim I've got a big dick or anything, because I haven't. But I don't know. I'm just not an anal guy. I never have been. I don't really understand when there's a minge going begging. Why would you want to put it in the arse? Whatever. I'll use it again in the future. Now, I'm a little bit late to the party for this one, but I do actually have a story about the one time I got arrested, and there's not much detail to it, but I thought you might like to hear it. So after I finished all my training in the army, I got posted to Germany for 3 years, and I was 18 years old, so I was fucking loving it. And just getting absolutely shit-faced, try and chat up some birds, fail, get a taxi to a whorehouse.
That's the one thing about Germany is they have like exceptional brothels there. I've never been to one. But when I went to Amsterdam, like this is like, I don't know, 2000, P-Town had this cousin who, I don't know exactly what his job was, but he worked for a company that had a lot of international offices. I think he did some like HR recruiting or something, but they sent him around to like different offices, and they had offices like I think it was a German company he worked for. Or the headquarters were in Germany. Anyway, he was in Munich for a bit. He was in Hamburg for a bit.
Oh, I love Hamburg.
Yeah, and so when we went to Amsterdam, he came and met us for a weekend, and he was like telling us these stories, crazy stories about how his boss was like, we're all going to the brothel. And like, he like took the whole, like all the dudes, I don't know. Well, obviously probably didn't take the women, but all the dudes on the company's dime to this brothel in like Munich, and was just like, just pick any two that you want.
Guaranteed. P-Town is on an episode of Eurovision somewhere.
No, it wasn't P-Town. It was P-Town's cousin. P-Town wouldn't do that.
Guaranteed. P-Town's cousin is on an episode of Eurovision somewhere.
He was telling us about this, and he had pictures, and I was like, how did you get a picture? He's like, I just, asked her, and she was cool with it, and I gave her some money, and I was just like, and they're both like,
why is there a hot. Channel 4 crew here filming us?
I mean, they were super hot, and I was just like, in my mind, I got this like, idealized vision of what a brothel in Germany looks like. So I'm kind of like,
take that out your head, because that is not what they're like.
I don't know. The one that the two that he was with, they look like they're Eastern European or something. They're attractive.
On their company's dime. But yeah, I've watched millions of hours of Eurotrash to know what a brothel in Germany looks like. And also Hamburg, which is very seedy. The prostitutes all there don't look like even my fake mum or my real mum. They look like a mum that you don't want. Like, oh shit, I'm gonna pay to shag her.
Well, I don't think Twisted Firestarter would mind.
Go
Martin
home
from,
and cry myself to sleep.
What'd you say?
I was gonna say Martin from FTV. He went out to Germany.
Well, he was
when
in the army.
when he was in the army, the army. When he was in the army, he went out there for 3 years, and he
you know what
shagged
he
a
did?
lot of fat women.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. You know what he did? He just like refilled petrol into Jeeps and military machines. That was his job.
I imagine that's what Twisted Firestarter was doing. There was no war in Germany this time.
To sleep. And then rinse and repeat. That was my typical weekend in Germany. And then one time, I don't actually remember the first half of it. I've sort of got to piece it together from what other people told me. But apparently, I was shit-faced outside a brothel somewhere, and I was gobbing off about something, and they called the German police. And one of them was a policewoman, apparently, and supposedly I was very sexist towards her, which is quite shameful, but also sounds believable, to be honest. And actually, the next morning I woke up, my neck was fucking killing me. I reckon they karate chopped me or anything. But anyway, they then call the military police, who then come and cuff me and chop me in the back of the paddy wagon. And then that's like when I woke up. The first thing I remember is being on my knees in the back of a police van, handcuffed, and I didn't know why I was there. I didn't know what I'd done, and I start just panicking. My first thought is, oh my God, I've fucking killed someone. And I'm freaking out and I start crying. And
I was about to say there had to have been tears. Had to have been tears. I guess, I don't know. I mean, you come to and you're in the back of a police van. I would probably be freaking out too, because I'd be like, all right, what exactly did I do here?
My first thought would be, I've finally done it.
We kill somebody?
I've finally done it now.
Or farted?
Well, no, I can do that whenever I want, kind of. In a way.
No, but I mean in front of Putin or something.
Not in front of Putin. Never. Sexy times only. Although he might be into that.
You know,
Russian men.
Putin almost might be a good term for a vagina fart.
A Putin.
Putin.
No,
She's just sitting there
Putin
over
to
there
me sounds
Putin.
more like an anal act.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I'm not surprised there were tears.
In and I was shouting things like, "You'll never make it stick!" And the monkeys in front would just turn around and go, "Shut the fuck up!" Because I must have heard it all before. And yeah, that's pretty much it. They took me to gutter slow, processed me, took me back. I think I got like a weekend show parade or something. I probably got fucked for it somehow. Can't really remember. But that's, it's not cool at all. Not really Al Capone crying in the back of a police van, but that's my getting arrested story. So all the best. Speak to you soon.
Oh God, I love Twisted Firestarter.
I fucking love Twisted Firestarter. Yeah, I want more army stories.
One of these days, I do want to go to hopefully go to England sometime soon. If you guys aren't wiped out by the Delta variant. But I would like to go there sometime soon. I'd love to meet up with that guy. He's got great stories.
Yeah, see, I'd like to meet up with him, but I would also like to just be like, if other people were there, I'd be like, shut up. Twisted Firestarter is telling a story.
He's telling us he's regaling us with another tale.
Yeah, it's his turn to speak.
Anyway, people call the Signal hotline 323-522-4032. If you love the show and you want a little bit more, check out the Signal on Patreon. You can sign up right now. We literally have like 2 shows going on right now. It's like we got the regular show and we got a bonus show. Just go to patreon.com/sickandwrong. $5 a month to get an extra. You get the Sick and Wrong news story. You get phone calls. You get our outtakes. I think it was this week you were talking about flipping out on ketamine.
Yeah, I really hate the flagrant lies that you tell in these titles.
Kate
of all the
just had a
outtakes.
full-on flip out, like a freak out on ketamine, and it's amazing. She was throwing people's coats, kicking people out of her home. You'll hear it. You can go hear it.
This is how Harrison felt. These twisted lies that you tell. This is how Harrison felt.
You ruined this podcast when you joined. All right.
I
This was a
did.
boys' home. This was a boys' home.
I know, and
Our
I
girl
ruined
just
it.
comes here and taints it all.
Yeah, totally.
Ruined it. You blew it. You blew it, D.
D, your best years are behind you now.
Patreon news story actually was a good one. It was about a woman who ran over her husband in a four-wheeler after he requested a divorce. Yeah. And then I don't know if it was, yeah, I think it was this week actually, when we did a call about that dude who had the most bizarre is that gay question with butt sex and fingers.
Yes. We went into deep levels discussing where the finger.
And it made no sense anyway. That's at the $5 level. A few bucks more, you get Sick and Wrong news. You can hear us talking about Dr. Dre ordering to pay $300,000 in monthly spousal support to his wife, ex-wife.
Monthly.
Yeah. And then also there's the bonus Sick and Wrong Overkill, or mini episode. And this week, Kate did it about the bob-haired bandit.
Yeah, from the 1920s. Before Bonnie and Clyde, there were the Coonies in 1920s New York.
So if you want more Sick and Wrong, go to patreon.com/sick and wrong, sign up today, and you get a whole extra show every week. Also, we got some merch at the T Public store, sickandwrongpodcast.com/shop. Click on the picture of the Pope, get yourself some merch. Finally here, Sick and Wrong Song of the Week, another music death. Sometimes I can't ignore a music death to somebody who I admire, or who I did admire, and who influenced me, especially at an early age. I mean, as a music,
that's why I did an hour-long episode about Amy
Winehouse. Yeah, last week. Exactly. It's like, as a music fan, there's a lot of people that just stick out, especially in your formative years, and there are people that just influenced you and made a lasting impression. And this guy particularly did. He's one of the first rap artists that I was ever into. Biz Markie. The clown prince of hip hop, died last week, 57 years old.
A lot of upset middle-aged men on my Instagram.
Were you ever a fan of the Biz?
I have never heard a Biz song. I have never heard.
What? How have you never heard Just a Friend?
Oh, you got what I need.
Yeah, it's like it's like one of the first rap songs, like huge rap songs.
Only know that song because of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
This guy, he was definitely an innovator in the genre. Like, he started back in the day when rap was just like, just beginning. He met Marley Marl, actually, Symphony of New York, Marley Marl, 1985.
I also don't know.
And he was at the time, he was working as the human beatbox. I mean, it was amazing.
Okay.
What he could do, with his mouth. Yeah, and then and then he released his first album. I'm actually gonna play a song off his first album. But what's interesting about Biz Markie is he changed the face of rap music. I wouldn't say it was for the best, because he did kind of change how rap artists can use sampling. So at that time, like if you go back to the 80s and you listen to a lot of different rap artists, you could almost sample a whole song. You take Bob Dylan, sample a whole song. You listen to Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys.
Great
you
album.
could never make that record now, though, because they just like sampled, with impunity. They're like, oh, fuck it. No one's going to sue us. We're just sampling. But then what happened, Biz Markie did that. And I mean, he got into trouble with a case that helped change the way rap industry did business. So the musician Gilbert O'Sullivan sued him over his song Alone Again on his 1991 album, I Need a Haircut. He charged that the rapper's use of samples from his O'Sullivan's 1972 hit Alone Again Naturally amounted to unauthorized use of his music. And he won. O'Sullivan won. And moving forward, hip hop artists had to clear the use of samples. And so Biz Markie said in a 2008 interview, "It was me. It wasn't a rape case or a gun case. It was a sample." And so he released his 1993 album after this called All Samples Cleared. Yeah, because of that. But it did change the face of rap. So I'm gonna end the show here in tribute to Biz Markie. Rest in peace, Biz Markie. Definitely gonna be missed. Definitely was an influence. I'm gonna end the show here with Pickin' Boogers from his 1988 debut album, Going Off. Here's one of my favorite lines from it. Hey, Ma, what's for dinner? Go up your nose and pick yourself a winner. It's inspiring. I think you should do that, Ted Cruz. People, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, episode 802. Till then, take it sleazy. It's a great song. I love Biz Markie. He was one of those like rare, just rare rap artists that didn't take it seriously, especially during that time.
It sounds like it, yeah.
During that time, it's like, gangster rap started coming up, like NWA and shit like that. Ice-T like started getting popular, but Biz Markie still was just like acting a fool and saying stupid shit, picking boogers. Like it was just funny. And when he collaborated with the Beastie Boys, it was fucking hilarious. He's like, that New York rap scene.
Yeah, I didn't know which Beastie Boys album.
Oh, he's on a bunch of Beastie Boys records.
Oh, is he? I've never
He's not on Paul's Boutique. He's on Check Your Head.
I
He's
like
on Ill
Paul's
Communication. Yeah, Paul's Boutique, one of the great. It's in my top 10.
Oh yeah,
it's one of
Paul's
the
Boutique is
greatest rap
amazing.
albums.
I love Mullet Head, that little EP. What's the name of the EP that Mullet Head's on? It was just
Is
as
it
Beastie
the
Boys.
Pollywog Stew?
It's like a very short EP. It's just before they were changing from being like guitar to kind of rap. But Mullet Head is
I think that's Pollywog Stew, actually.
Yeah, that's my favorite Beastie Boys
You know,
song.
Here's a D. Simon is a really cool guy story. When I was in New York City, first time, Kessler was at NYU, 1993. This is how old I am. It's like 18 in 1993. So I was in college in Ann Arbor, but I went out to New York. That's how old I am. But I was in New York and we were hanging out, and one of his friends was just like, dude, the Beastie Boys are playing Coney Island High. And Coney Island High was this like little shitty bar on St. Mark's. It's a tiny little venue, but they're playing under, I forget the name now. They're playing under, I forget the name that they're playing under, but they're playing under like a fake name.
They did have a fake name. They always used to.
Yeah, they had a bunch of fake names. And so they were like, yeah, it's not whatever that band is. I almost want to say it had Pollywog in the title. I don't know, but it was a stupid name. And so we went and checked it out, and sure enough, it was fucking Beastie Boys. It was a whole punk rock set.
Oh, amazing!
And it was crazy. I was like blown away because I wasn't expecting to hear. I was expecting to hear like Paul's Boutique or Check Your Head because that had just come out.
Yeah,
they just played punk songs and just guitar, full on punk songs, and they did at the end. Did you gotta fight for your right to bar? But they did it really fast. Yeah.
Oh,
and so
awesome.
I remember it was like at the same time, like we're all hanging out, and one of Dave's roommates was this like kind of Asian, sort of like Wu-Tang. He was really into Wu-Tang, but he's like a hip hop like Asian guy.
Yeah.
And he just like busted out blow on the table and was cutting up lines on the and I was just like, oh my God. Like, because I'm from Michigan, I was just like, we're in a bar and they're like, don't give a shit. And we're just sitting there doing blow.
We gotta get out of here.
Well, no, I was just kind of like, whoa. But then I look around. And sure, people are just sitting there like fucking doing blow, rails off the table, watching it. Like, and no one gave a shit. And I was just like, God, New York City, fucking cool.
I miss those days though. There was definitely
Fucking
way
cool.
more of a freedom. Just even 10 years ago, there was way more of a freedom to do that type of stuff. Everyone's getting so straight-laced.
I think it depends on where you live. I think LA still has a lot of latitude when it comes to that.
Yeah, New York definitely doesn't.
And fuck no. Oh my God. No. When I went to New York City, it was like 3 years ago to get tattooed because my tattoo artist was at this place in the Lower East Side, which now shut down and became like an artisanal candle shop, like all the other bullshit.
Wow.
I stayed in this like super hip hotel, which is right next door to where Kessler lives. And when Kessler lived down there, he had actually a really nice apartment that I think he was paying like pretty much what I pay to live in West Hollywood. Imagine it's way more expensive now. But the area was fucking sketchy, like Houston and Delancey, like that whole area was just like super sketchy. You go there now, there's like women walking their kids at midnight. I mean, it's night and day to what it used to be. Like the Lower East Side, it's lame. It's kind of lame, actually.
Yeah, all my New York friends just say how fucking shit it is now. It's just all very generic.
you know-
Apart from like there's pockets in like Brooklyn
Yeah.
and Queens. But-
Jojo Kelly goes to like his sister still lives in Brooklyn. I think he has friends that live in Queens. So he was out in Queens. He was sending me pictures like, yeah, this is actually it's way cooler in San Francisco.
Yeah.
You know.
Jojo.
But anyway, yeah. We gotta fucking wrap this up.
Yeah, thanks
You
to
have to work
everyone.
today, right?
Yeah, I have to go to work today. Thanks to everyone who stopped by.
Gotta bloody work today.
Got a bloody work today. Got to sleep through this heat. My cat is currently sprawled out over there. My word, he's completely collapsed in the sun.
Oh, is
Cats
it really?
love the sun. Yeah. What is
They
it about?
do like it.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Although dogs like the sun too.
Yeah,
They're all
dogs
just-
love sun.
Oh, he's flicking his tail now because he knows I'm talking about him.
Anyway, people, we gotta get going. Thanks.